This episode comes from the Kensington edition of the Roundtable Roadshow, where we explore what it means to serve a British guest. With Staycation on the Cards in 2026, Joe Morgan from The Other House looks into their experiences of different international guests, and we also hear what it's like to be a consultant in the industry. Let's tap in, shall we?
Hotelier's Voice. Exploring opportunity in hospitality with Ryan Haynes. Hear from the people making a difference. From revenue to operations, marketing to digitalization. Learn the thinking behind their decisions.
Hello and welcome to Hotelier's Voice, the Kensington London edition of the Roundtable Roadshow. We're here at the Other House and have we got a packed programme for you today as we explore everything from branding to profit margins and guest and staff experience. But first, I'd like to welcome my co-host who's helped me put together this event, Joe Morgan, the Interim Group Operations Director and owner of Meliora Consultancy. Joe Morgan. Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming. It's great to have everybody in the room. It's a packed room, which I love. It's lovely to actually use the space like this.
It is very nice. I mean, the fact that we got Adrian, we got light, but also the biggest event so far for the Roundtable Roadshow. So thank you for doing all the hard work and bringing us here, because I wasn't so sure about doing London, but you tackled me to the ground at the No Vacancy show and I surrendered and here we are. Now, it's been an interesting year, 2026 so far. I mean, what hasn't been thrown at the hospitality industry over the last 6 years? Yeah. But what are you seeing particularly here? What are the hurdles you're trying to jump over and the obstacles that are in your way?
I think there's some of the things that everybody's experiencing. So obviously increased costs. So increased costs with labour, increased costs with utilities, increased costs with food. All of those things are probably affecting pretty much everybody in the room. And then specifically here, this business has been going now 4 years. And we've seen very much a tradition of multi-generational families from the Middle East coming during the summertime. We're not seeing that volume anymore. We're not seeing the volume of inbound American visitors that we normally see. So it feels very different in the business. And I'm looking around, I've got quite a lot of nodding heads. So I'm imagining these are things that are actually affecting many of us, particularly in the London market.
I mean, it's fascinating because as we go on the road, there are different experiences across different markets, as you can imagine. I mean, we obviously heard that Cornwall had a surge of bookings recently because the weather's going to be great. People are staycationing. People are afraid to travel long distances because of worry that war may break out. Hotel, as you said, data is really interesting. Hotstats recent Q1 data shows that there's a modest 2% TrevPAR increase, with UK hotels on the whole really struggling with those profit margins and how they're sort of be able to up those. Where are you finding opportunities for really improving that revenue across the board within the hotels?
I think actually targeting that sort of staycation market and looking at people who are wanting to travel into London and where can we add value? Where can we make sure that, the rates that people are paying, are they getting what they're expecting to get? Are they getting more than what they're expecting to get? We shift. I mean, Ingrid, the general manager here. Say hello, Ingrid. Ingrid and her team here do a brilliant job in as much as during holiday periods, they shift the operation to be very much more family focused. So we will increase access for children in the pool, we'll increase those times. We'll put movies on down in the den. So things that actually appeal to families. We don't charge anything different. We don't charge anything extra, but these are things that are like a bit of a surprise and delight. Come and watch a movie with some popcorn. It's there for you. Kids are happy. Parents are happy. For those of you who have kids, this is true. So we will look at things like that, but also talking to our guests and what is it you're looking for? How can we help support you? Because it's not just our industry that's struggling. It's having a huge knock-on effect to anything. I mean, anyone who's tried to put petrol in their car recently will realise that, the cost of living is going up for all of us. So how can we ensure that we're still actually attractive to our guests and we're trying to work with people? Because ultimately, we've all got jobs to do and we've all got bills to pay.
One of the things that we discussed a lot in Kent was the demand patterns and how, they're all over the place at the moment. A lot of very last, even same day bookings coming in, 40% of business coming in the last 4 or 5 days in the lead up to. So business planning, how do you adapt? How do you remain agile and deliver those experiences? I mean, there obviously comes a need where you need to cut back, but not on that guest experience.
I think it's building your relationships with your team. Really looking after your team. The other house do an awful lot to support their team. We've got a lot of benefits and resources for the team so that you can have those open and honest conversations about when business is fluctuating, when you may or may not need people, how flexible are your contracts? I don't want to use the swear word 0 hours contracts. I know that this business doesn't do it, but how flexible are your contracts and how supportive and available can you be for the team to have the conversations when it is busy? A couple of weeks ago, we saw as we came into half term that the weather was nice, business suddenly picked up. I was looking at the Bob and I was like, oh, goodness gracious. Right. We probably need to look at some rotas for the middle of the week. Ingrid helpfully was on holiday. So it was me. But yeah, we were looking at that. And then it's talking to you. People are going, right, who can we get in and how can we actually cover this to make sure that we're still delivering the service? And again, that's not easy because many of us are short or don't necessarily have that level of flexibility. And also people have got to be willing. So I think building the relationship with your team is important.
Let's talk about that because one of the things that we have found, particularly regionally, as we go out into the countryside, is that some people are not really turning up in the way that they used to for work. There's perhaps not the level of commitment that you'd hope. And interesting, I think one thing that particularly came out of the Kent edition was that, they're not showing up because they don't want to show up. But hold on a second, they're not showing up for the team. And that's a really interesting aspect, right? Because I remember being younger, feeling guilty that I would be letting my friends down at work or I'd be letting certain team members down. And that seems to be missing in a bit of work culture today. Is this something that you come across here or you see across in wider hospitality sector?
Not specifically here. The team here tend to be quite cohesive. I would say that I'm sat here, but no, genuinely, we do have a really kind of good team spirit here. But I've definitely experienced it in other businesses, and we've probably all had the people that they just go AWOL. And I think also with the change now in some of the employment law and the getting sick pay from day one and things like that, it's great that it's protecting our team members, but it also sometimes people who may be kind of less inclined, it could also potentially encourage some of that behaviour. But I'm not seeing it massively here. I don't know what people are seeing in their own businesses, but it's like I said, trying to build that kind of team spirit and communication is probably the best way to tackle it. But there's a lot of the things that are out of our control.
I mean, this is a lot of the conversation. Yeah. I look forward to addressing that a little bit later about really how do you create that culture within hospitality and make it an exciting place? Because I think we're certainly at a turn whereby university is not as appealing as it used to be. And trying to get into an office is really hard work. But what can hospitality deliver people that is highly rewarding? And an article that I read the other day was that within hospitality, you're able pretty much instantly to see the impact you make. You can see the revenue extra revenue get from that guest who's just stayed. You can see, the joy on their face or the reviews that you get. Unlike perhaps finance or marketing or something, which it takes a while to see those results come through. Now, again, the industry's changing. It's particularly if roles and specialists, you particularly being a fractional consultant. Fractional.
Love that word.
Hey,
fractional.
Yeah. Who's not fractional? Tell us about that life of a fractional consultant. Where have you chosen to specialise?
For me, mainly in operations, which also has a lot to do with people. I do a lot with operational process and procedure and behaviour. And there's many of our partners in the room, there's amazing technology out there, but actually if you don't manage the behavioural change and the training and the shift that you need to happen, you can switch on the best technology in the world, but the team will just mourn for the system they had before, no matter how bad it was, and still find ways around things if you don't actually manage that change and the processes and the standards that go with it. So I do a lot of work in that space. And then also leadership. So many of us will know there were people who left the business during COVID and because of Brexit. And then there were people that were promoted during that time because they had some capability and some ambition, but there wasn't necessarily the structure and the training behind it at that point. So we're almost now trying to retrofit with some people. We know they're the right person. We know they're great, but actually they probably need some support and coaching. And so I do quite a bit in that space as well. What we find in the fractional, the consultant space now is, particularly with the shift in business, is smaller independent hotels, smaller groups don't necessarily want to spend the money on big roles like operations directors and that type of thing, but they do need some of that level of support. So actually, can they buy some of that time and expertise to support them in their business? So as consultants, we might not necessarily be the purse holders or the decision makers, but we're often the ones talking to, advising and guiding those that are. And I think, that there are many of us in the room that have got an awful lot of experience, and actually being able to share that is very rewarding. I enjoy it.
So do I. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when we were in Taplow House, this is going back a couple of years with our second roundtable, there was a lot of talk about outsourcing and how, it really, as hospitality, what do you need on site? And how much of it do you need to deliver that immediate experience? But everything else can be outsourced, right from housekeeping to laundry to F&B. But actually, it's the people who are welcoming the guests to the door that you perhaps just need to make sure that you're servicing. Now, big one, you've already alluded to it, but British guests. Hey, so big staycation boom, apparently. What do we think they're expecting?
British guests. I spent a long time working on cruise ships and mainly with the British market. And we actually used to do cultural training on British guests. So I am British. So if I offend anybody who's British in here, I apologise now. But there is that whole element of do not push in front of me in a queue. I want hot food on hot plates and various things that are very stereotypically British. But actually, I think it really is that genuine hospitality. I think there are obviously wonderful establishments which are very select in their service, ultra luxury, yes sir, yes madam, and those types of things. But actually, certainly we're finding that people want that genuine engagement with someone, the genuine hospitality. They want people to learn what they like and actually respond to that. And the service that we have here is less formal. We like to use people's names. We like to get to know our guests, and we find that is actually very appealing. And we do get a lot of repeat guests from that. And very much the other house was set up to be kind of your home away from home. And we have an awful lot of British guests that stay with us because they're in London every time, and that's what they actually like. They feel like they're coming more at home. So we are seeing some of this. But yes,
well,
an interesting market.
We're throwing it out to you now. And I think this is an interesting one because London being a hospitality market full of people who are not often from the UK, also get alternative perceptions on what a great British guest would expect from a London experience. So what I want you to do in your breakout groups, get to know each other. Start with, if you don't know one another, but you've got 10 minutes now to really share between you, what are the expectations from British staycationers? What do they want? Off you go. At this point in the agenda, our audience go into breakout groups of 4 or 5 people to discuss some of the questions that I pose. So if you want to be part of these roundtables, do follow us on LinkedIn or join my newsletter on hoteliersvoice.com, and I'll share where we'll be heading next. South Yorkshire and County Durham is coming very soon in September. Let's head back and hear what they had to say in their group, shall we? So, the Great British Experience. Paul, what was some of the feedback on your table there?
So I guess we were talking about London market being very different to the rural market. I think the London market is still very international. And saying, why do you come to London? You come for the external experiences. So do people really stay in their hotels when they come here? But it's always good to have somewhere to come back to and have a bit of respite. And if it's very room focused with maybe a more of a limited service model, you have to focus on very good room design so people have somewhere to break out to. Whereas maybe the more luxury end of the market is more about the F&B delivery. Maybe there's a spa, maybe there's somewhere to have a bit of respite. So when we go away, what do you do with the kids when they get bored of walking around the shops? You need to have somewhere to go. And actually, if the weather's great, you want to have a pool, you want to have a roof terrace, you want to have somewhere to go. So I don't know. I think it's a very different market in London.
When the weather's great, exactly. That has been the last few days. Over to Geraldine over here, please. Some of the points that we can draw from your table.
So we had quite an interesting conversation about the different reasons that people travel. And one of the things that we talked about was that we're now so used to being able to do everything from our home, our shopping, everything, that sometimes people need a reason or an experience if they're going to go to a place and they want to spend their money. We also talked about how breakfast is very big for the UK traveller and the importance of having a good variety, hot food, hot plates, and people don't want to be rushed. You know, that might be the only meal they take in the hotel as well. So they want to really experience that whole area. We also talked about how they like to be welcomed and that personal experience. And then we also talked about how sometimes we just like to have a little moan, and then once we have it, we're happy and we will move on and enjoy the whole experience as British people.
You've got to have a good moan. Absolutely. Love it. Alessandra, non-native British. So what was going on your table?
Well, we discussed about how British guests coming to London, especially from outside of London areas, have considerably higher expectation. London hotels cost more than a hotel out in the regions or up north. Thus, I must get a lot more for what I pay for. Some discussion around how British guests fight the accommodation service charge that some hotels are enforcing, and there are no question about the service charge around F&B, but there are still a lot of question about the accommodation service charge, and that leads to complaint, especially from the British customer. And then we have very good insights here from a marketing perspective. You know, when a British guest travels and stays within the UK, is very knowledgeable. Is very knowledgeable the different areas and different destinations that are available to travel. So you not only compete with your immediate comp set in your neighborhood, you're also competing with other areas, and then brings kind of dilutes loyalty and return guest for especially in the independent space.
I mean, I think one of the things that service charge is fascinating. Red Carnation were talking about the fact that they introduced their service charge and very few people question it really. But as a kid, I was always surprised. My dad's very tight-fisted, right? Butterflies and moths come out of his wallets when it gets out of his pocket. But one of the things he always did was leave a little bit of cash for the housekeeper as a tip. But now that we don't carry cash, it becomes so much harder. And having that facility, the ease to actually leave those sorts of tips, allow people to make their own choices, is, I think, one of the things that technology has not necessarily allowed us to do, or we try to simplify it through having the service charge. And I find that the tip is one of the things that, as a hospitality member, professional, was the thing that you enjoyed about being in hospitality. And you think, is there a chance that we could turn the tables on this? Is there a way that we can actually allow our staff to be rewarded for the level of experience that we used to provide and potentially could still provide? There's more to come from the Kensington edition, so follow us on Hotelier's Voice podcast on Spotify or Apple or anywhere you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget you can drop me an email and share any other stories or join in with the programme on ryan@hoteliersvoice.com. Would love to hear from you. Please share with your colleagues, friends or industry peers as far and wide as possible, because I'm really trying to give you some of the insights that some of our leaders in hospitality are sharing around how they're addressing some of the commercial and operational challenges that our industry is facing. Thanks so much for listening. Ciao for now.